To put an end to his tyranny, the stupid but brave knight Yuri gathers forces from all over the kingdom to form a volunteer army and leads it to the Black King's castle on the battlefield. The daughter of the late Holy King Juliana, along with her special knights Arison and Bershar, leads the Holy Guard to fight the monsters at the entrance to the castle and prepare for the attack. While the Black Army General Irons unleashes energy blasts on the volunteer army and dominates the battlefield, Juliana's commander and SD challenges her to a one-on-one duel, and for strong fighters known as the students of the Three Sages fight with the earthly golem and destroy it with their abilities. The First Lord of the Obershas tribe fights with enemies with a cold sword and gathers the leaders of the tribe under his command to destroy all the undead soldiers on the other side. Yuri leads a squad of 5 people into the castle, which includes his beloved girl Funa, a supply of food, and Pixie Pure Carbate. They fight the undead in the throne room and kill everyone with their abilities. After that, Yuri points his sword at the Black King and says that cutting off his head and freeing the continent from its darkness, he charges his sword with mana and rushes forward to strike and kill him, but it turned out that he did not train hard enough and was too weak for the final boss battle. He thought that his armor would save him, but the Black King did not buy it and walked out clouds of dust holding the defeated hero by the collar. He threw him to the ground and went up to his daughter Fuego Chronicle of a Chain, a mysterious book capable of changing the future of this world. She refused to give the book and he hit her in the face. Like a real Asian father, Peruk flew up to him. Man told him to stop, but the Black King grabbed her like an insect and began to crush her, turning her into a cake. She was a fairy of hope, and by killing her, he would save the world from stupid ideas like a rebellion against him. But then on the scene, Juliana came out with her knights and shoot him in the hand. The Black King summoned even more dark soldiers to fight them and then grabbed the book from the hands of the background. The book began to glow and they both pulled it like stupid children and tore it into 2 parts. When this happened, pure coal from his hero's hands and disappear, and the book began to emit dark energy and covered the entire sacred capital, which marked Yuri. His friends pulled him and the others out of the castle and they retreated to their camp away from the battlefield and began to wait for Yuri to wake up. Maria and Funa look after Yuri while Princess Julia, along with the knights Burkhart and Wayne, discuss the state of the Dragon League and the volunteer army. After the unsuccessful attack on the Black King, the Alliance forces return to their countries, and in the current state of Yuri, it will be a long time before they can unite again to fight the Black King. Burkhart is skeptical about the abilities of Yuri and reproaches him. Juliana says that they all believe in him because it was he who brought them all together to fight against the Black King under one banner, and they leave, and the commander of the forces of the former capital remains with Ares, Wayne, and Burkhart to protect the princess. They decide to stay there and wait for Yuri to wake up to find out what he is going to do next. After a while, Yuri comes to his senses and Funa calls everyone to his tent. They ask him what should they do, and he says that now they just will return to the capital and report their losses to the head of the Adventurers Guild, Gilbert. He looks very depressed, and we find out that he, too, is suffering from the Black Disease, which slowly affects people and eventually turns them into Dark Knights under the command of the Black King. Until now, Yuri has fought against it using his willpower, but after the main villain kicked his ass, he lost faith in himself, and the Black Disease continues to intensify. In a small village near the capital, a poor old lady is trying to buy an apple for a copper coin. The seller tells her that prices have skyrocketed and she can't buy anything for herself. At that moment, a huge fat man comes in, throws away a cosplayer in an assassin costume with white hair and tells him to get out of the way. He bypasses the fat man using various tricks and helps the old lady up as she leaves. The guy cuts off the fat man's pants and shows the whole world his tiny penis, while everyone admires him with sparkling jewelry. He grabs a couple of apples and runs away like a thief. Later he meets an old woman, gives her an apple and accompanies her home. It turns out his parents went for milk and did not return, so he grew up on the street considering himself Robin Hood. On the other hand, Yuri and his team head to the capital, and along the way, they see the consequences of the war, and a dark abomination takes over the land, destroying crops and cattle. Farmers look at Yuri and throw dirt in his face, saying that he is a pathetic loser who could not fulfill his promise to protect them and their land. Yuri's group silently continues to move forward and eventually sees a man who runs to them and asks for help. The man says that they were attacked by the Black Army, and Yuri understands that because of his life, The influence of the black fog has increased. They go forward and see how a white-haired young man protects an elderly woman from the dark nights. Burkhart and the others rush into battle and begin to destroy the monsters, but notice that for some reason their mana has weakened. The young man uses his magic and this strengthens the mana of the others. He continues to fight and takes part of the mana from Burkhart to continue Yuri. Remembering that he was once the same as he declares his readiness never to give up and also picks up a sword. They fight back to back. Yuri also uses his ability to strengthen mana and notices that she has become stronger thanks to the abilities of the white-haired young man. Then he makes a dash forward and kills all the enemies with his special move. Seeing this, the young man understands that it is Yuri from the volunteer army and introduces himself as Aram. He then falls and passes out. Yuri says that he is probably tired and takes him to a camp outside the village later at night. Aram wakes up and sits next to Yuri. He says that he heard that Yuri is the captain of the volunteer army and hands him his bracelet. At that moment, Feud comes out with him. She says that Kane and the others will soon be back from patrol and begins to prepare dinner, and they sit down at the table. Kane notices that, as usual, Fuego Tovi has disgusting food and thinks when he will eat normal food. But then everyone is surprised to see that Aram eats his portion like a pig and even asks for more. He asks Aram if he likes the way she cooks and what he usually eats since he likes it. Aram replies that he usually eats lizards and insects and even feels sorry for him. Yuri says that Aram is not like the one who lived in this village and why did he even risk his life to save the local residents? Aram says that he was just passing by but could not leave them to die, and in addition, he hates these black monsters. Then he says that he still needs to become stronger, and suddenly dark energy begins to emanate from the book like in the capital, and the situation becomes completely crazy. Arma jumps forward and tries to protect Fu, but the book pushes him away and then stops glowing. Funa notices that the pages have darkened, and this means that the darkness in the world is spreading more and more. She explains that any darkness that appears in the book is reflected in the world, and any corruption that spreads in the world makes the pages of the book dark, but there is still hope because their friend Puricarbate he reports to the Black King, and he says that they must find Puri and kill her, otherwise they will not be able to take over the world with the help of their darkness. Later that night, Yuri approaches Aram and asks why he needs to become stronger. Aram looks at his stupid expression and says that without power you can't do much in this world. Yuri asks but he doesn't want to join then, and Aram replies that he doesn't like to obey anyone and he loves freedom. Yuri says that alone he can't do much. What can he do? But Aram replies that he was always alone and he likes it so much. Yuri says that he was just lucky that he has not died alone yet. Aram objects that he lost even with his friends nearby. Yuri looks at him and says that when he lost to the Black King he lost faith in himself, but seeing how bravely Aram fights in the village, he remembered that he was always ready to fight to the end like Marudu. When he came to his senses he saw that his friends were nearby and ready to support him. As usual, he says that he sees potential in him and knows what if Aram will fight with them to strengthen his ties and become much stronger. The next morning they get to the capital and see that the city is attacked by the Black Army. The city is a tip-off and the Royal Guards does his best to contain them. Yuri and his group join the battle and also start killing the monsters. Yuri meets with the commander of the guards and they exchange information about the situation. The commander says that the outer wall has already been destroyed and Makwadar is protecting the western wall near the slums. Yuri says that they will deal with the enemies here and then return to the magician. Juliana uses a spell to increase mana and increases the level of her knights. Pikera fights in his own style during the battle. He again takes some mana, Burkhart's, and this pisses him off. They start arguing and Burkhart says that he will deal with him after the battle and returns to his team on the other side. Yuri uses a synchronized combo attack with Kane and Makido and they surprise Aram by destroying all the enemies in the district. Aram asks Yuri to teach him this attack and Yuri says that for this you need to be very skilled because he is just a thief monkey who fights only for himself. Aaron gets angry and runs away saying that he will become stronger in his own way. At this moment, the leader of the enemy army enters the city and turns out to be a dark knight. The black fog thickens around them and their mana level drops. The monsters attack Yuri and wound him and then begin to overpower the others. One of them manages to inflict a strong blow on Giuliani with a spell, but Burkhart shields her and gets seriously wounded. The enemies decide to finish him off, but then Aram intervenes and begins to kill them using his fast fighting skills, and he collects his mana and shares it with Juliana and her knights, including Burkhardt. Thanks to this they can use their combination attack with mana and defeat all the enemies in the area. Aram says that he decided to stay a little longer because he wanted to see more of their combined attacks, and he also wanted to make Burkhardt take back his words. When the battle ends, Yuri gathers everyone around him and says that he once lost to the Black King and he told him that he would destroy the whole world, and he says that he wants people not to lose hope while he is alive, so he will create a squad to fight the Black King. Juliana says that the squad will not be enough, so they need to gather forces from all over the world again, and everyone agrees to help him and is happy that he is finally back to his usual self and apologizes, but then he falls to the ground and shows a terrible wound on his stomach. The next morning they treat him, and Juliana says that she wants him to join Yuri's team because she thinks that he will be very useful to them. He insists on staying with her, but she says that she will go to the capital and will gather her strength and wants him to help Yuri instead of her. In addition, she sees potential in Aram, so she wants him to train him and help him become stronger as much as possible. He accepts her order but feels abandoned and begins to feel sad. At this moment, the deputy head of the guild, Celine, enters and asks Julian to go with her to a meeting with their leader, Gilberta. Meanwhile, Yuri and Fawn walk next to Gilberta and discuss the state of the guild. Yuri tells him about his desire to create a squad to suppress the Black King and says that despite the fact that he lost, he still hopes. Looking at Aram, who is practicing his movements, then they go to his office and he says that first they will go to the three sages to find out where the Puruk may be. Gilbert says that he will help them with everything he can, and at that moment Selenium comes with Juliana. Gilbert gives her Yuri new magical communicators for long-distance communication and says that the guild will help them when the time comes. On the other side, Aram is hungry after training, and being a poor guy, he starts wandering around the city and again thinks about stealing food, but then he remembers that now he is Yuri's friend and that he trusted him, so he decides not to do it and just continues walking. At this moment, he hears the girl scream and runs to the main market where he sees men threatening the girl with a knife. Aram knocks the knife out of his hands and protects the girl. After that, he dodges the enemy's attacks with his deft movements and takes the short sword from the arms dealer. Then he fights back and easily defeats the villain and then gives him to the guards. At this moment, a weapons dealer approaches him and says that he impressed him. He introduces himself as Dusty from the Merchants Guild and says that he supplies weapons to the volunteer army. He then says that Aram has a goat eye for choosing swords, and this is the best sword in his kole. He says that this is the sword of the famous blacksmith and the head of the clan of Earth Spirits, Baldet. He says that he saw Aram join Yuri in his quest to create an army to suppress the Black King and offers him the sword as a gift for joining the army. He says that Aram should give the sword a name because every sword should have a name and that it depends on him whether the sword will become famous or be forgotten. Aram thanks him and returns to the training ground to continue his training while Gilbert spends time with Yuri and says that his own darkness has become stronger. He says that sometimes he dreams of him fighting for the army of the Black King, but Yuri says that this will not happen. At this time, Burkhardt passes at the training ground and sees Aram practicing blows. He thinks about his orders and tells him to relax because his muscles are too tense. Then he looks at Aram's sword and asks, "What kind of sword is?" Aram says that it is called the Temple Key Maru. What does a flash of inspiration mean? Burkhardt asks where Aram got this sword, and he answers that someone gave it to him. Burr grabs his hand and says that no one would just give him such a good sword and accuses him of stealing it. That moment, Juliana Yuri Wayne walks by and asks what is going on. Burkhardt says that Aram must have stolen the sword, but then Dusty comes in and says that he gave the sword to Aram. Burkhardt feels ashamed and he apologizes for his mistake and leaves like a pathetic loser. Later that night, Yuri struggles with his growing blackness, which shows him the illusions of his dark, corrupted self, which tells him all kinds of nonsense, just like that depressive voice in your heads in the comments while he is arguing with the voice in his head. Aram knocks on the door and comes to talk to him. He thanks him for believing in him and says that he used to steal but gave up. This is after joining his army. Yuri asks what he will do and will become stronger, and Aram replies that he will destroy these stupid monsters from the Black Army. Then he says that his village was attacked and he was the only survivor. Everything was taken from him, and he wants to avenge his friends and family. That's why he laughs to become stronger. The next day they all prepare to leave. They meet with the commander and Juliana says that she will go to the holy capital and ask her returned comrades to join the army of the Black King that will suppress the rebellion. The commander says that he will also talk to the guild but cannot guarantee how many people will agree to join the army. Then he turns to Yuri and says that the leader of the magic guild, Aludra, will also join them at this moment. They see that Aludra enters the hall along with the legendary dragon slayer Gats, that is, the Wurg. Eren admires the Wurg sword to the dragon slayer and they introduce themselves to each other. Meanwhile, Juliana tells Burkhart that he must do his duty well and she is sure that he will understand if he spends more time with Yuri's group after that. They say goodbye and Juliana's group leaves and Yuri's group goes to meet the three great sages and continues on their way until sunset when they set up camp. For the night Yuri approaches the Burkhartu to train him Aram during the journey but he apologizes and goes into the forest for a walk. It seems Uranus has her eye on him. His wounds begin to bleed with dark elements. His negative thoughts and emotions take over and he feels increasingly unwell, rejected, and then Iran comes up to him and pierces him with dark energy saying that he was abandoned and he should join them and they will accept him with open arms. At this moment, the chronicles begin to go crazy again and they see black mist coming out of the forest. Yuri remembers that night and runs into the forest and the others follow him. Soon they notice Iris, who is standing in front of Burkhart and attack her with arrows and spells. She blocks their attacks and then summons dark soldiers to fight them off. Vork and Eren easily deal with them and Burkhart also gets to his feet. Yuri sees this and decides to use a combo attack with mana synchronization with him and his team and tells Kane and Mashi to get ready. They synchronize their attacks and direct them at the enemies, but then Burkhart loses his pride and allows the darkness to engulf himself. The magic of the Black King passes through him, and he too turns into a demon and emerges from a black energy explosion in the form of a demonic knight. He rushes at Aram, but Yuri jumps forward and tries to repel his attacks. They fight for a while until the others intervene to help, but Burkhart uses his newly minted that not today. See enough that she came to take him home and teleports them both back to the Black King's castle. When everything calms down, Yuri contacts Juliana and tells her that Burkhart went over to the side of the Black King's army and began to hear this. Julie gets very upset and thinks about her decision to send him with Yuri. At that moment Ares drives up to them and says that the sacred capital is on fire. They immediately rush into the city and discover that there is a revolution going on there. Some people gather in groups and destroy everything, setting fire to the building in the name of the Black King. They think that if they do this, they will be able to turn into demons and join the army of the Black King. The Holy King has fallen and the army of volunteers also lost the battle and they have no other choice but to join the Black King, and this is what the capital is doing now. The commander of the army of the holy capital and SD leads his people against stupid civilians and captures them all. Takes control of the situation. When everything calms down a little, he discusses the situation with his officers. But then they see how some guy is trying to throw a bomb into the administration building. It looks like they won't succeed. But then Ares appears and forces the guy to surrender. Julian and Wayne soon catch up with them and meet with NSM to find out what is happening. Julia orders Ares to let the guy go and asks him to tell what he wants. The guy says that he wants to become a demon and join the army of the Black King because it is the only way to survive. But she becomes furious and begins to explain at length why this is bad. After she uses the talking technique and sheds a few tears due to the fact that Burkhart turned into a demon, she leaves and heads to the palace. There she meets with her friend Louise, whom she left in her place as queen. She and Ainsley Ton discuss the future plan of action. Wayne walks with a report that the forces of the 9 territories are located outside the holy capital, led by Shaos. Their army is still recovering from the battle with the Black King and it will be some time before they return to their territories. Wayne invites them to join the army of the Black King and Juliana agrees. She orders the messenger to be sent to the Shu and waits for an answer. On the other hand, Yuri's group is also upset due to the loss of a strong knight, but still decides to move forward along the path. Yuri stops to clean his blackened hand and Funa notices how bad everything is. He leaves the tent, forces Yuri to sit down and says that she will help him get rid of the disease. She takes out the chain chronicle and uses it to reduce the blackening, but unfortunately, this time nothing comes of it. She is very upset with her helplessness and begins to cry. After that they continue their path to the Sage's Tower and Aram is very excited. Yuri explains that they are going to the Sage of Fate who may know where the peak is. They go to the tower, but suddenly they are attacked with a fire spell. The robber rushes forward, blocks him, and says that they were attacked by the Sage's army led by their best students Lam Uni and Kati. Suddenly, they hear the voice of one of the sages of Cupernical, and Yuri shouts that he came to ask for help from of the sages in order to fight the Black King again. Cupernical says that if they want their help, they must prove their strength and orders Vellum to continue attacking Utachita Kane and Yuri fight off the attacks pouring on them, while Aaron rushes forward and manages to reduce the distance between him and the spellcasters to not block his blow with his sword. Yuri rushes to the rescue and they begin to push back the enemy, but then he orders his attacking spells and decides to finish off while Aeluodra is running out of mana. He casts a powerful fire spell, but Aaron notices this and shares her mana with the Slout so that she can protect the team. After that, she goes into Madara Mo and calls down a meteor shower from the sky. It seems enjoys the spectacle, but then his colleague Duma appears and tells him to stop his childish games on the battlefield. Aram chases Uni and tries to fight her, but the third sage Fatima intervenes and stops the battle. After that, they all come up and Funa introduces the sages to Aram. The sages discuss how to defeat the Black King, and Cupernical explains that after their defeat the king's castle continuously emits dark energy of high density. This has created a barrier around the building and it will be very difficult to overcome. In addition, it has strengthened blackout in the surrounding regions. Dilma asks if people will follow them after they find out about this, and Yuri says that he will fight the Black King regardless of whether he has followers or not. Fatima says that they must follow the chosen path, and Yuri asks her about the whereabouts of Pika. Being a seer, Fatima tells him that Parika is alive but is located in a place where she herself cannot get out. She cannot say where exactly this place is, but there is hope. Besides, they must go to May Pass, and that will be their next destination. After that, they all sit down and rest for a bit, and Aram meets Velen, who asks what these tattoos on his body mean. Looks like they might fight, but then the fourth student Klaus walks by and tells them to calm down. He explains that these tattoos are actually called runes and make him very strong. Aaron encourages and asks if that's why he can use all this cool magic and wellness. Shiva, isn't there anything else he wants to see? Then he praises him for his fighting spirit and teamwork and asks about his unique ability to share mana. Aram asks why they don't help them fight the Black King's army and tells that they fight but only when they attack the Seer's tower, and they all obey the Seer's order. And Lut and Work say that they will stay in the tower to find a way to defeat the Black King and get through the protective barrier around the castle. It seems she has some business with Kira because they are constantly quarreling and egging each other on. When everything is settled, Yuri and his group prepare to go to May Pass and then decide to go to Sprite Island to ask Hydro about the whereabouts of the Pico. When they were about to leave, for students approached them and said that they would also go with them as Cupernical ordered. They said that he was interested in some ancient artifact recently found in May Gorge, and they go there to explore it. A few days later, when they passed through May Pass, they noticed that everything around was covered with a black blizzard. It was a snowstorm mixed with my magic, and it constantly spawned and revived dark, undead soldiers. Yuri's group fought with them throughout the journey. The Marina turned out to be the most useful on this journey because her healing magic could cleanse and destroy undead monsters. Aram called her useless and said that even she can be useful in battle, and this angered her. At that moment, they noticed a small fluffy ball that the little monster ran to them to escape from the army of black undead soldiers. He jumped and hid behind Aram and Velnio, the undead, with a fire spell. The attack turned out to be too strong, and the snow also fell under their feet, and Aram fell from the cliff. Yuri tried to help him, but he also fell, and Wellness said to everyone, "Oh, everyone fell." And Kaguya asked what they should do now, and Kane suggested, as planned, to meet with the local spirits of the earth and ask them to help save Yuri and Aram. Meanwhile, Yuri and Aram were going down the slope with a small furry monster. Aram decided to keep it and called it Fluffy. After a short walk, Yuri suggests stopping and digging a cave in the snow to spend the night. Soon night comes and Aram tries to use a magical communication device, but it doesn't work. Yuri says that it must be because of the black blizzard and says that they will wait here because he is sure that his friends will come to the rescue along with the spirits of the earth. Aram asks why he is so sure that they will come, and Yuri replies that he has traveled a lot with them and trusts them completely. Then he tells him how important it is to make friends and communicate with them. Aram says that he does not understand this because he has always been alone, but is jealous of Yuri. After that they wait for a while and Aram begins to fall asleep. Yuri will be him and tells him not to sleep because in such a situation it could be dangerous. Then he suggests playing verbal mini-games and Aram begins to laugh at him. Then he says that he will go to relieve himself and then they can play and go outside. He notices that the Fluffy is not there and begins to look for him, but he is surrounded by a thick black fog. Aram does not return for a long time, and Yuri goes out to look for him. He calls him by name and continues to look for him in a strong snowstorm, and his negative thoughts begin to form in this black storm. He tells him to leave Aaron and that it is his fault that he is lost. Although Yuri warned him, he uses ninjutsu technique on Yuri and begins to fight with him, physically turning into a dark warrior. The emotional damage accumulates and Yuri loses his composure, but then Aaron intervenes and defeats the dark warrior. Then he tells Yuri that he still does not understand what the connection is, but he thinks that this means that he can help Yuri when he is weak and needs the support of friends. This leads Yuri comes to his senses and he and Aram are preparing for a joint attack and they finally succeed, which makes Aram very happy after defeating the monsters. They talk together and Yuri suddenly notices an old man coming out of a snowstorm. Yuri recognizes him and introduces him to Aram as the teacher of Fatima, the Sage of Fate. Balthazar uses his magic, clears the sky and gets rid of the black storm. A fur ball jumps out from under the hat and the old one also runs up to Aram. The wizard looks at Yuri and says that he, like everyone else in the comments, is mired in depression and says that it would be easier to give up and become an emo. But Yuri replies that he will continue to be a fan of Naruto and will never give up, so let him believe in it. Hearing this, Dumbledore from Wish laughs and says that he needs to go to Azes in the desert and defeat a new dragon there, and this will help him in his quest. After that he disappears, like Houdini on the other side of the fin, and the others meet with the representative earthly spirits Olga, who is responsible for the extraction of a recently discovered ancient artifact. She asks the fiery spirits Rala and Keiki to join them, and agrees to join the army of the Black King and then sends a team to search for Yuri and Aram. Meanwhile Fui and Marina remain and inspect the artifact, and suddenly a chronicle begins to glow on it, and a page from the history of the world appears where it says that in the labyrinth there is a sword capable of cutting through the darkness. The rescue team finds Yuri and Aram, Dawn, and they return to the camp where they celebrate joining the army of the Black King. During the holiday Aram meets the head of the earthly spirits Balder, who forged his sword. While all this is happening at the military camp of Shu, Juliana's messenger arrives and conveys a message from the princess, but instead of joining them, Shu kills the messenger. The next day Yuri and his group go to the island of Seoul across the ocean to find out more about the whereabouts of the Puri. Along the way they meet Shu and his army and joyfully approach to ask him if he will join the army of the Black King. But to their horror, Shu points his sword at them and demands that Fung give him the chronicle, because he is going to defeat the Black King alone and rule the country. Aaron is angry with him for acting like a villain and asks who he thinks he is if he does this. At this moment, his younger brother and the second oldest Setsuko comes up and says that they also received an invitation to join the army Black King, but they are not going to do this. Instead, they will fight him in their own way, and for this they need a chronicle. Then he introduces Suz as the first lord of the 9 fire territories in the land of ogres and himself as the second lord of Susan. To fall on him, Tachuri comes between them and blocks his sword with his. He tells him to stop fighting and asks if they can unite again and fight together. Yuri replies that he had a chance, but he missed it because of his softness. He reminds him that he said to use any means to defeat the Black King, even if he has to use his friends as a human shield, which Yuri clearly didn't like. He says that now you yourself will take this power of darkness and conquer the whole world like a real Black King, and pushes him away. Then he approaches F and Aram asks her to give the book, but she says that the book itself chooses its owner. He says that he knows well how to subdue others and tries to use force, but Yuri again comes between them and begins to fight. His army also begins to attack the regroup, and a full-scale war begins. Kane and Nashadat Yuri signal to use a combo attack with mono synchronization and begin by shooting at him, but Yuri flies into the dust, reminding them how useless he is. Then Kane jumps towards Fumi and Ran and defeats them both before taking the magic book from them and release the dark energy. Seeing this, Yuri comes in a rage and rushes at him with a sword, But suddenly several lightsabers fall from the sky and behind them is a robot from the failed scientific project of Alona Mask. At that moment Irina and Burkhardt appear and explain that this is Altsa, an ancient golem called to bring disaster to the world. Then she turns to Shua and invites him to join them, but he spits in her face and tells her to look for others. Shua's army rushes at two demons, but Altsa attacks them first and then engages Shua in the meantime. Iris approaches Yuria and begins to use the evil talk jutsu to awaken the darkness in him and remind him that he is becoming more and more black. While all this is happening in the holy capital, Juliana meets the priests and decides to finally take her place as the queen of the Holy Empire and address her people. At this time, she holds a public coronation ceremony and uses the technique of mass jutsu and political speech to cheer up everyone to the crowd and give them new hope. Meanwhile, Yuri almost succumbs to his evil self and becomes a depressed guy, but then he remembers the words of his favorite character from the anime Naruto and drives away all the sad thoughts. Then he fights with Ares and tells her that he has decided to defeat the Black King and will not allow her to ruin their plans. Arma and Funa also see this and decide to help him, but Burkhardt intervenes and distracts them with his black sword. The battle continues on the battlefield. Dark soldiers and friends appear. Yuri finds himself outnumbered by the Marihoas, surrounded by dozens of dark soldiers. Seeing this, Yuri also begins to panic and because of negative thoughts, his mind also begins to give in. He thinks that he is a real hero, but then he opens his eyes and realizes that he actually wounded Kane, who at the last moment jumped to protect Fu from another wound. He looks at his best friend, falls to the ground with a sword in his chest and begins to cry like crazy. The darkness inside him breaks out and all the negative thoughts fill him up, and soon he completely succumbs to depression and turns into a demon. After seeing that Yuri has returned to the dark side, the Shu laughs at him and calls him a fraud. Then he says that this is another reason to finish him off and releases an energy blast, but Alt-Sada flies up and blocks it with the help of an earth golem. Then she summons two more golems to distract him, and Burkhardt knocks Aram down with an earth wall attack. Iris says that they will have enough time to play with them next time, and now they need to return to the Black Canyon to introduce a new recruit to their army. With these words she opens a teleportation portal and they all enter it and disappear. When they leave, and the others gather in the nearest destroyed building, and Marina does everything possible to save Kane with the help of her healing magic. They all look down depressed that Yuri has turned into a demon and wonder what they should do next. At this moment SEO passes by with his army and asks that they are here. They do when their captain betrayed them and went over to the other side. Then he invites the sage's students to join his army. They want to truly defeat the Black King, but they all refuse to accept his invitation and tell him to get out of here. After hearing how he speaks badly about Yuri, and Iran gets angry and leaves too. He says that Yuri did not betray anyone. He was just confused and waits for his friends to come and save him. Then he says that he needs to return the book, but Shuz replies that if they want to get it then must be taken by force, and if they want to save Yuri, they must hurry up, otherwise he will kill him first. On the other side of the map, Yuri meets with the Black King in the form of the Black Knight and says that he once came here to save this world, but now he will see if he can. This world must face its darkness, and if it falls it was never worth protecting. In the ruins of the harem, and the others finally find hope and rise to their feet. Shide and Marina decide to return to the capital and cure Kane as soon as possible. The sage's students decide to return to the tower and report on the situation. Aram and Funa, on the contrary, decide to continue to Soul Island to find more information about the whereabouts of the Piri. They continue to Soul Island over the next few days, and on the way Aram notices that Funa is very sad. One night he sits down with her by the fire and asks her to tell her about Yuri. He tells her about a meeting with the old wizard of the Black Storm cosplayers, and he mentions that Yuri once killed a dragon and asks how it happened. Funa, are you know, and says that it was not a very fun adventure, and says that the dragon was the guardian of the oasis, but he was infected by darkness. Because of this he went mad and destroyed the oasis that he once swore to protect, so they had to fight him. When they weakened him he came to his senses and asked them to finish him off while he was still sane because they had no other choice. Yuri, they had to do the dirty work. She cried and said that she had to stop him and that maybe he became a demon because they pressured him and forced him to fight even when he wanted to. Aram listens to her and then uses the technique of talking without jutsu and says that when he was not yet familiar with Yuri, he thought that he an all-powerful guide who has no support or allies and who himself became the captain of the volunteer army. But they met him personally. He realized that Yuri was not like that at all. In fact, he was quite weak and humane, and he realized that no one is all-powerful without weaknesses. That's why we are friends. Then he repeats that as they know now it's their turn to save Yuri, and this gives hope to Fu. They are a procession, and in the end they are on the island of Seoul. Meanwhile, he will also teleport to the island and meet Yuri, and the situation becomes tense. On the other side, Marina and Mashadak go to the capital and save Kane and also inform Giuliani that Yuri has turned into a demon. Juliana decides to save this world as the queen of the Holy Empire and says that she will destroy all her enemies, be it Shu or the evil Yuri, if he wants. In the dark, he sends Ko to an emergency meeting with Shui in the Tower of the Sage. For students tell them about everything what happened. Copernicus studies an ancient artifact and thinks that something can be made from it, and Fatima says that there is a small chance that Yuri crossed to the other side to find a new world and asks them to help him in this. Meanwhile, Shuz gathers more than 500 of his people and calls on even more reinforcements from his territories to create an army capable of defeating the Black King Aram, and Fu sail on a boat to Seoul, and Aram remembers his conversation with Yuri. He tells him about a fairy named Didra, who lives in the library of the World Tree on the island Seoul. Her name is the same as the name of the continent, and she is special even among the fairies because she owns the chronicle. After that, they land on the shore and are immediately attacked by Aned soldiers from the Black Army. Aram rushes into battle, but the good fairy Venta destroys them all with her magic and asks them both to follow her to the library. She leads them through the forest to the World Tree, and they see how the soldiers of the Black Army attack the island and destroy everything around. Father Veen Trafalgar fights them off and tells them to leave before it's too late. At this moment, Furball screams, looking to the right, and Aram notices that Yuri is using dark magic. He immediately attacks them, and Aram begins to fight them off and asks why he is doing this. He tries to use the Tokuma technique on him, but Yuri tells him to shut up and pushes him aside. After that, he attacks them with airstrikes filled with darkness and says that the Black King cannot be defeated, and Aram will soon understand this. At this moment, Raf Algar and Venta rush at him and begin to fight, and Aram and Fanon go to talk with Agd about why they came. They run to the library and meet IGD, which is waiting for them at the entrance. They continue to run and eventually find themselves in the center where Agd keeps his chronicles. She activates the book with the help of magic and transfers them to her notes. After they are pulled into the world inside the book, Aram notices that they are in the capital, and outside the landscape changes and they also move. Fanon explains that this is a chronicle or a ha, and it contains the most detailed information about the continent and its history. Aram asks how it differs from her chronicle, and she replies that this is a completely different level because the chronicle contains records about the entire world including this continent and everything beyond. With these words, they begin to look for the answer to their question about the Puri. To begin the search, they return to the moment when Yuri lost to the Black King and Pika disappeared from his leadership. After this was moved at the time when Yuri only recovered from the defeat, and the darkness began to wake up in him. But then the whole world around them was dizzy, as if they were put into a kitchen combine, and it turned out that Yuri made his way to the library and ran away with her. That was why such a mess. Aurar was trying to stop him, but the darkness of Yuri also begins to corrupt the book, and the Iram is separated from the Fen, and the underscore gives in times when Yuri was still a young guy about his age and was a simple villager. One day, he was attacked by a horde of the undead, and he decided to fight them despite his weakness. But then a blonde knight appeared on the battlefield and dealt with all the monsters with the help of a special attack that is very similar to Yuri's signature move. After that, Yuri sat next to the knight and asked how he could become stronger and said that he wanted to be strong in order to protect his village when monsters attacked it. The knight answered that for this he will have to train for days, for months and years, and perhaps he will never learn this skill. But if he continues to train like an annoying child who wants to get a toy in the store, then one day he will become strong enough to use this skill. After that, Yuri decided to train every day, cutting with a sword. We all hoped that someone told him about the existence of axes and saws, but sometimes you need to be a little stubborn to become a hero. One day, His village is again attacked by undead monsters and he rushes to the rescue and manages to win. Monsters using a special skill that he has mastered over all these years, but he comes too late to the destroyed Darod. Despite this he continues to move forward, but after the defeat from the Black King he becomes depressed and the darkness begins to consume him. But even then he tried his best to fight his dark thoughts and pinned all his hopes on Aram and asked Cain to help him. If something happens to him, well, we all know how it ended, but the main thing is that he did not give up. At that moment the video is interrupted and Aram thinks that Aram's subscription to Netflix has expired. But then the old Gonda Balthazar appears in front of him and says that they will meet again. Aram asks how he can talk to him in the book and he replies that there is nothing that he cannot do. Aram says that if this is so, then he wants Balthazar to make him stronger so that he can defeat Yuri and bring him to his senses. Everyone in the comments hits their foreheads against the wall because he could just ask the old man to kill this stupid black mage Yaramorosik, who had previously turned into a demon. Aram holds onto a rock and grabs Yuri with his other hand, and Demon Yuri stands over them, pointing his blade at their hands. He says that Yuri is a pathetic and stinking loser, and Yuri, in turn, also says depressing things to him and tries to let him go. But Aram is tired of listening to it, so he uses the technique of talking without jutsu and throws Yuri at the demon so that he fights with him. Then he also gets up and prepares to attack. This time he tries Yuri's signature move that he saw in the memories and rushes forward with a bright light piercing the demon Yuri. At this moment a bright light fills a world and they hear the voice of Pika, who says that she will return when everyone again finds the light of hope. After that they all leave the book and find themselves in Yuri's library, and the Black Army has already left and Rafalgor looks bad. Wanda comes out with the Edge Chronicles and shows that they too have turned black, having received an answer. Fiona and Aram return to the boat and sail back to the mainland to continue their journey. On the other side, Juliana prepares to meet Shua and his army, but on the way she encounters two members of the 9 territories of Fireheart, Aki and Tukai, and they ask her to help them defeat Shua. They say that if he decides to join the Black King they will not allow him to continue to rule then, and will ask to make an alliance with her as the Holy Queen. After hearing the voice of the Piri, Aram and Funa go to the deserted Azes called Sand Lake. There they talk with the Queen of Azes, Ashri, and tell her about Balthazar and his advice to Yuri to visit the oasis since a new dragon will appear here soon, the Guardian. Hearing this, the Queen tells her assistant Farah to bring the secret, the tablet that they found in the sanctuary after defeating the last Guardian Dragon. It looks like it's some kind of music. Can Srinathji joins her just at that moment. One of her people comes in and says that a huge army of 10 people is approaching them carrying the banner escape from the 9 territories. Aram says that it must be that stupid Over. Shazan says that he will also join the battle, but then the man says that another army of the same size is already on the ground, led by the Saint Queen. Juliana sends his advisor to the Caliph on the battlefield. There's a Neutralombo from the desert, and he tells them that if they start fighting now, both sides will suffer great losses, and while the Black King is trying to take over the world, he is sure that the Holy Queen or any of the leaders of the 9 territories will not be so stupid as to continue the war. Then he proposes to hold negotiations between the two sides and asks them to bring 100 people from each side, and then leads them back to the country. There he meets with Julianne and kicks her out of the coronation, and then Aaron appears and also greets her. She asks what he is doing here, and he explains that he came to save Yuri and bring him back to their side, and then turns around and looks at Shua. After that they go to negotiations and Shua begins them, demanding that Juliana give up command of the saints since she is not suitable for the role of their ruler. Then he begins to talk about how her previous leader Yuri switched sides and he heard that one of her personal guards turned into a demon. Things are going badly for her, but then one of the soldiers comes in and says that they were attacked by the army of the Black King. This time it's only Irene with Burkhart and Olzada with an army of several thousand undead soldiers. Shoes becomes delighted and rushes into battle with a long ball to stop him. Olzada takes off and scatters a lot of flying fragments to us, as if inspired by the clown Bazi. She summons her earthly golems and also attacks Shoes with lightsabers. At the same time, Juliana fights Burkhart and he begins to deal emotional blows to her. He says that she looks pathetic fighting the Shu like a weakling, and then crosses swords with her several times before hitting her and throwing her to the ground. He then makes her doubt her decisions even more by saying that she must see the result of her orders and is about to deal the final blow. When Enslot jumps and blocks his attack, he tells Juliana to leave him and go fight. With Shaz meanwhile, Aram stands back to back with the Khalifa and tells him to watch out for Shaz and Juliana, because they are like oil and water and can try to kill each other during this war. On the other side, Shaz fights with a flying clown doll and his brother jumps and takes the enemy away from him. At this moment, Juliana tries to attack him. Shaz at the last moment blocks the blow and throws her back. She attacks again and crosses swords with him, telling him to get out because he is the only one who stands in her way. He tells her the same thing and they both begin to fight, seriously strengthening themselves with mana. In the end, Giuliani manages to throw him away with a powerful blow, but Shua comes out of this state releasing a powerful wave of dark energy. Shua blocks it with his energy wave and they cross swords again. As they fight, the battle becomes more fierce and darkness envelops them, and Daranus watches them from afar and laughs at these fools who themselves make her task easier. But then Aram delivers a powerful blow and orders them to stop. At this moment, the Musica also begins to sing her song and tears appear in Verbola's eyes. Aram says that they almost succumb to the darkness and should stop fighting. Arya doesn't like that he interferes in the battle in which her enemies kill each other and turn into demons and sends Olzana falls on them. Aram taunts Burkhart and fights with him, but they manage to knock the sword out of his hands and deliver a fatal blow. Aram uses a powerful attack and throws them back. At this moment, Musica's song ends and she turns into a white whirlwind and throws the legendary red sword at Aram. The sword, capable of cutting through the darkness, lights up and Aram launches a powerful fiery attack on Olsen. Barely has time to defend himself by blocking it from the side. At this moment, the whirlwind stops and the fur bolt turns into a huge guardian dragon. The soldiers of the Black Army also receive several fireballs and they see that the students of the three sages have also entered the battle. Now that they have the upper hand, Irina retreats from the battlefield and orders Burkhart the same thing when they leave. Iram approaches Shua and says that he is not worthy of this book and asks to return it. At this moment, the book begins to glow and again becomes completely white. Then she falls into the hands of Aram and he accepts this result. After which the students approach Musketi with an ancient artifact. Aram officially asks Julian to join the army of the Black King and they ask Shu to join too, but he says that he will go his own way and leaves with his people. The dark energy is concentrated long enough and the Black King sends his army of reinforced soldiers Barka to the continent to take over the world once and for all. Aram and Fuma, together with the students and Flower, fly on a fur bowl in the form dragon to the Tower of the Sages. It seems that a similar song is written on an ancient relic and they need her to sing and activate it in order to destroy the dark barrier around the Black King's castle. Along the way, they see the destruction and damage to the earth that the Black King has caused and decide to quickly end it, cutting off the airship on the roof. It turns out that this is an ancient relic found in the Mei Gorge and the spirit of fire and earth welcomes them on board. Having landed, they meet the three sages and tell them about their plan. Then they ask Muski to sing and is the mechanism working to destroy the darkness, and Aram asks if she could sing during the battle at the barrier. Cupernickel says that they will do it from the inside and explains that this ancient shit is the most advanced invention in the field of magic and technology and it can teleport anywhere in the world in an instant. He explains that they teleport on board with a large number of soldiers and use the song of Muski to destroy the barrier from the inside, so they will open the way to the allied troops so that they would suddenly attack the castle of the Black King. After that, they name the names of the people who will go on the ship and announce that these will be two spirits of fire. For students of Phony and Aram with their furry dragon, Aram asks if they will leave immediately. Cupernickel says that this old shit needs time to start after a long period of inactivity. Then he begins to read the launch spell and everyone is waiting for the engines to start. At this time, Balder polishes Aram's sword and praises him for that he has become stronger since their last meeting. After that, Aram comes out and chats with Phelim Mar. He says that they need to talk and asks Aram if he can kill Yuri when the time comes and if not, then he better not go on the ship. Aram looks at him and says that he will bring Yuri back to his senses, and although now he perhaps does not see the whole picture, he is confident in what he must do. Velnatin and says that he must try his best and then leaves him alone. Then Aram goes out and meets Fanya on the main deck of the ship. Pan asks if she loves Yuri. She blushes like a tomato. But then she realizes that she is talking to Aram, and he probably says, "Is it in his usual manner?" He says that he loves this guy very much because he changed his life and taught him a lot. So he wants to return him even if he is to knock everything out of him. He asks her to help him. She tells what happened on this continent when her homeland was destroyed by the Black Army. She did not remember anything about her past life, but in her hands was a mysterious book, and for some reason the monsters were not far behind her. So Yuri saved her and invited her to his team. Since then, her life has been full of happiness because she has found peace thanks to the various things that Yuri showed her, and hoping that their friend is still alive in this demon. They both decide to return him. At that moment, Burkhart appears on the scene and lands on the ship. He attacks Aram and tries to take away the chronicle from the fan. But Aram pushes him away and tells the fan to run away. The salty night, the demon summons several dozen dark soldiers and orders them to attack. Soon Venus and the others arrive at the place and begin to shoot spells left and right, and soon a large-scale battle begins between them and the Black Army. The great sage Dilma contacts Juliana and orders her to immediately go to the Black King's castle. Everyone on the ship holds back the Burkhart and his undead army. The fight becomes increasingly intense when Aram fights with the salty night, and they wait for the music to come on board. When it rises, they force Cupernickel to start the engine to take off, but one of the dark soldiers manages to ruin the power rune, and it begins to drain the mana from everyone and turns them into mindless vegetables. A situation becomes critical, and Neeluodra runs out of mana again, but orders to shoot fireballs and attacks on Burkhart. This gives Aram enough time to concentrate his mana and share it with the slave, and then he directs a powerful stream of mana into the magic rune, and the ship immediately takes off. They enter the teleportation portal and instantly find themselves outside the Black King's castle. During their journey, Burkhart manages to attack the ship and blow up the engine. Then he knocks out Funa and takes her with him to the castle to meet with the Black King. Meanwhile, the ship crashes into several rocky peaks and lands, having received serious damage. The ship is badly damaged, and it seems to our heroes that everything is bad. But fortunately, they all survive, and Furball manages to save the music outside the barrier. Juliana and Ashprina lead their armies on the offensive and wait for the barrier to lower. But then they see the airship falling inside and begin to doubt that their plan will work. Aram and his friends fight the army of darkness inside, and Aram entrusts the first Sharika guard music. Sharika leads her to an ancient artifact, and Musica sings a song, and the barrier of the dark element begins to fall. Meanwhile, the allied troops enter inside and engage in a battle with the army of darkness, and again the fate of the world depends on them when they stand at the Black King's castle ready to cut off his head. While all this is happening, outside, Burkhart brings Fuel to the castle. Yuri binds her with his magic, takes the second half of the chronicle from her and gives it to the Black King. The Black King calls the pike and says that he will destroy it no matter what, and then desecrates the light half of the book with his dark magic. He connects both parts and makes the book corrupted, and then begins his plan to plunge the world into darkness on the other side. Era enters the castle with four students and hack their way through the hordes of the undead from the army of the Black King. An earth golem appears in front of them, but commands him with a powerful fire spell and blocks the way rubble so that the monsters do not pursue Aran. He tells him to go save Yuri and the defense along with the other students of Aran. He continues to move forward, and the Black King tells Yuri that he must deal with this annoying boa and allows him to do so. Meanwhile, outside the castle, Juliana leads the allied forces and they fight the Black Army. So far everything is going well. But then Arena appears on the scene and summons even more strong undead soldiers to fight them, so that she does not was causing problems, and SD comes forward and decides to fight her one-on-one, and Juliana crosses swords again with Burkhart. Burkhart uses her earth magic and summons from underground a huge pillar that forms an arena around the queen. He asks her, is the weight of the crown so heavy that she can't even stand straight? To his surprise, Juliana answers in the affirmative. She says that she was never trained for this, but given the situation, she will do everything possible, and this where she fills her sword with mana and gets ready to fight. But Burkhart flies up to her with a sword and pushes her to the wall, placing the sword against the wall next to her. Then he grabs her hand and asks if she is trying to avoid her true responsibility. but she puts her hand on his face and says no, and now she is responsible for him feeling the effect of no jutsu. Burkhardt pushes her through the wall and makes her fly away, but she manages to hold on and not fall, and at that moment a badge falls out of her pocket of the Royal Guards. Burkhardt waves him and remembers how he first became a knight and swore to protect the poor princess, and then looks at her standing in front of him as a beautiful and powerful queen ready to save him from suffering. He is fascinated by her light and just stands there while Juliana attacks him and pierces him right through. His body falls to the ground among the sacred army, and Juliana comes up and covers him with the sacred flag, allowing him to rest in peace in the castle. The Black King strengthens a chain chronicle of dark magic, and everything around begins to shake, like in a Taylor Swift song. The area around the castle is filled with dark elements, and the undead receive a powerful buff. They kill the allied troops and then knock down the Mizuko with a beam of dark magic. When she falls, the dark barrier begins to form again, and Juliana worries that without the Muse they will lose their escape route. The undead penetrate inside the barrier and push back the few allied troops. Now, thanks to the reinforcement from the Black King, they are easily cope with ordinary soldiers, and the situation becomes critical. The Elodie also loses to Iran, and she wonders what they are fighting for when he tells her that he is fighting for the bonds of friendship. She gets annoyed and decides to kill Julian. Her attack is about to reach its goal, but then a Shu from his army appears on the battlefield and protects Julian with a powerful energy attack. Meanwhile, Eren enters the main hall and faces Yuri, who has taken on a demonic form. Yuri jumps from the pedestal and attacks Eren with his huge sword, but he blocks the blow with his sword and begins to press Yuri with quick attacks during the battle. He asks why Yuri went over to the dark side and demands an answer for abandoning him, although he himself taught him friendship and loyalty. Yuri says that he no longer bears this name. Now he is the Black Knight, and Aram cannot hold back a grimace of disgust upon hearing his pretentious words. He says that he understands Yuri. After all, when he was a hero, many people depended on him, and he wanted to live up to their expectations, but when he lost to the old fart, well, you lost faith in him, and this burden became heavier and heavier until he became like this. Then he says that Aram must learn to not pay attention to other people's expectations and asks him to say what he wants. Aram replies that he doesn't want anything. Therefore, he will act according to his desire and destroy everything. He rushes forward with a powerful blow. He begins to push Yuri back and says that in his words there is no strength and determination. Aram remembers the words of Velm that he must kill Yuri when the time comes and decides to be serious. He concentrates bright mana in his hand and strengthens his sword. He decides to use the same attack that Yuri taught him and says that the next blow will decide the outcome of the battle. He rushes forward from the outside. The Fluffy Ball calls his magic weapon and saves Mizuka from falling from the cliff, and Led intervenes to protect the ancient artifact from attack and tells Mizuka to continue singing, and they restore the protection of the allied troops, getting rid of the barrier of the dark element. Shu asks Julian about Aram, and she replies that he went inside to deal with Yuri. Arina looks at them and says that it is pointless because once you become a demon you will not be able to come back, but Shu shuts her up and says that Aram had the courage and spoke out to him, so it shouldn't be a problem for him to do the impossible. Otherwise, handing him the Chronicles of the Chain would be pointless. After hearing this, Iris asks if he is also a stupid fan who talks about connections and friendship and sands from the sky to allies' troops are small meteorites, but Shu surprises her by jumping out of the smoke and knocking her down. He tells her that he doesn't care about the chatter about the main character, and the only thing he respects is true power. She jumps up and shoots fireballs at him, but Shu just walks through them like a tough guy and tells her that she is too weak. Then he hits her with a powerful energy blow and turns her into ashes. On the other side, the Black King decides to destroy this world, having spoiled the Chronicles of the Chain. But Funi uses her secret magic and calls on the Chronicles of the Chain to protect them, and absorbs all the darkness, destroying it. She begins to blacken and rot alive, and the Black King looks at her lifeless face and says that she can ruin the book again by pouring even more of her dark energy into it. Aram, meanwhile, thinks that Yuri's armor are made of the same TM energy as the barrier outside, and that he will be able to break through it from the inside if he hits Yuri with his light mana. But Yuri throws him to the wall and says that he does not need his white energy. He is going to hit him, but then an arrow flies in and hits him in the hand. He looks to the side and sees that his former teammates Cain are moving into the hall and raising Aram. They say that they came to bring him to his senses. Aram asks Cain if everything is okay with him, and he replies that from such scratches will not die, and then says that the army of volunteers always fought so. If one fell then the other helped him up. Then he looks at Yuri and asks, "Is this correct?" Aram tells Yuri that he is not alone and charges his light raisin with Nigan and shares his mana with the other team members. After that they prepare to give him a combination attack, starting with Cain, who knocks him back. Then Mashika shoots him with arrows and Marina encases him in a healing ball and allows Aram finish him off by breaking through his armor with his white mana. We see at Yuri still fighting with his dark self. Their battle continues and dark Yuri continues to say nasty things to him, but then Yuri receives the light of the Aurum and finds the strength to overcome the darkness. He raises his sword and rushes at dark Yuri, pierces his heart and puts an end to his demonic days. Outside his armor breaks and he comes out all clean. After that they all run to the throne room and see that the Black King is going to fill the Chronicle of the Chain with dark magic. Mashadad attack by shooting at him with his arrows, and then Cain and Aram rush at him with swords. Yuri and Marina save Fuel and begin to heal her, and she heals Yuri during the battle. The Black King notices that the light mana in Aram's hands is the light of Hexen, which can destroy any darkness. He becomes furious and releases a huge wave of dark energy that incapacitates Cain and Moshe. Then he opens a portal and takes out a huge. The sword begins to teleport to attack Yuri and Aram. At the same time it seems that he was inspired by the movie Dragon Ball, but Yuri blocks his attack and says that he will defeat him and stop the darkness once and for all. Aram throws a ball of light mana at him, and it hits Yuri's sword, which pierces the Black King from the front, and Aram strikes from the back. Concentrated dark energy begins to flow from his wounds, and the Black King explodes with a powerful flash of dark energy. When the dark aura dissipates, he turns into a black dragon. He begins to charge a powerful bomb, but then a furbo appears and uses Kemen. Then he grabs it and flies up into the sky, and Aram and Yuri fly after him on their magical flying devices. Both dragons begin an incredible battle of energy rays of fire breath, and our heroes decide to help them. Aram attacks and distracts him like the fly in the summer, and Yuri slams him right in the face and then pierces one of his eye. The black dragon throws him off, but Aram saves him in time. But now both of them and the furry dragon decide to finish them off with one blow. He starts charging his energy beam, but Fur uses the move again and knocks him down. They both fall, and Fur turns back into his furry friend, and Aram comes down to save him. Meanwhile, the black dragon decides to turn into something like a Frieza and becomes a Kaido-like dragon human hybrid. Getting angry, he launches powerful dark energy attack and shoots at Yuri, but Eren blocks it with his Tom beam and pushes him away. He then strengthens Yuri so that he does not get hit like the first time when he fought with the Black King, and prepares to give them a fatal blow, and they both decide to end this battle with a double combination of Yuri's signature move. They fight their way through the darkness of the Black King and eventually defeat him by getting rid of all the dark elements inside him. He transforms again into a man and falls to the ground, and our heroes turn to the Funi, who dies due to the strong influence of darkness and cannot return. Not quite the same. The Black King stands up and calls on the Chain Chronicle to heal Defu, and as soon as this happens, hope returns, and as promised the Perica appears and reunites with his friends again. When the Black King disappears and the Chain Chronicle returns to its original state, darkness around the world, all the undead soldiers begin to disappear, and peace returns to the earth. Juliana raises her sword and announces their victory, and we see that everything returns to its place. In the last moment of her life, Phryne's father tells her that she must restore the world that he destroyed using real power.